Okay, you know what's interesting about this game? I initially only became aware of its existence because Twitter recommended it to me randomly one day as pre release stuff was being posted, and I just thought it looked kind of cool, to be honest. Like, I knew nothing about the developer's previous work or anything like that, and I just really liked that it was kind of retro inspired and that it was coming out soon, so I just kept it on my radar. So, of course, I found it pretty neat when I saw that a lot of other people were also hyped for this, and it was more funny than anything. Like, no, I didn't find a hidden gem after all. More so a gem that everyone kind of already knew about. But still one that holds value nonetheless. Also, just to give forewarning, this video will contain spoilers for pretty much the entire game, including the true ending and pretty much all plot points. So I'll be getting into that in a couple minutes or so. So just letting you know now. That being said, I really like this game. Like, I spent a good 2 months getting through as much of it as I could, including all of the stuff with the true ending, and I would definitely say that it's a standout for me this year. Like I said before, I just thought it looked neat with how it was retro inspired, but like in playing it and going through the whole thing, I really got an appreciation for the overall presentation, like through the whole game. Like if we're talking philosophy of its style, right now after playing it, I really think that I prefer this style over the more modern HD 2D style that you see in like an Octopath Traveler, for example. Not that HD 2D is bad or looks ugly, but just for my preference, I really like the expression of this art style. Like I enjoy the 2D background that you see through every environment and how it looks like a portrait. And that's really cool. Like Brisk, for example, or the Cloud Kingdom is another beautiful place that comes to mind. And a lot of the game with its style pays homage to stuff like Chrono Trigger, which is something plenty of people have already spoke on, and something the creators were also open about in terms of being inspired by. But I also really like how the game feels like its own thing too. Like it's not just an imitation of those older works or anything. And it's crazy because I think another layer outside of the visuals to this game's uniqueness is probably the soundtrack. Like, this game had some bangers that I was not expecting going into this. And I knew Yasunori Mitsuda, who's known for working on Xenoblade, guest composed for it, but honestly, all of the tracks were way better than I expected. Especially the boss themes. Like some of those were stuck in my head for some days as I was playing this and just going through the story. But honestly, a part of me didn't even mind. Like, those themes were just bombastic and really made the confrontations feel grand. So that really added to my overall experience. Another thing that's worth mentioning is obviously the combat, which I absolutely loved here. And it's so interesting because playing it really got me thinking on some of the discourse that you might be familiar with already in terms of comparing turn-based combat in games to real-time gameplay, and just more so which is more enjoyable with just games and stuff. Like, it's no secret plenty of people feel that turn-based is outdated and, boring, to put it simply. But if anything, I feel like with a game like this, the combat really excels because you have so many layers of offense and defense that can influence each other on a turn-by-turn basis. Normal hits can influence your life mana, which influences how much power up you have in your next attack, like, your skills, and your skills can influence your ultimate meter, but using multiple skills impacts how much skill points you have, which is important for breaking spells, and all of this is just a fancy way of saying that the game is balanced. But I feel like the real kicker that makes combat here so effective is the simple fact that it plays out pretty fast, like both in how the game runs and the animations themselves. That's why I think you don't really feel bogged down by thinking moves ahead, and there's a level of spontaneity there, and I think that's what some people who prefer more dynamic and real-time gameplay resonate with to some degree. So yeah, and of course there's the story, which if I might say, is pretty good. Though I will say I don't think it's anything groundbreaking. Like, I'd say in a simple story like this, it's really the dynamics between the characters that make it feel special. Like, the main trio of Zale, Valere, and Garl is pretty much the heart of the story in my eyes, and second to that is probably the narrative progression itself. Like, the overall pacing of everything and how the events unfold while not super deep or complicated or anything like that, they're still pretty engaging. And I thought it was really cool, especially with this whole plot, to just see this anonymous narrator that we start out with at the beginning just get thrusted into the fate and the entanglements of these worlds that we end up exploring, and seeing the subtle implications about his feelings towards you and your party that you've been roaming around with and just everything else, and his relationship to the Fleshmancer. And that was really fascinating to me. And I don't think it was ever confirmed, but by one of the big confrontations of the game, with the Dweller of Strife, it seemed to me like the whole matter of recomposing the timelines never happened because he wanted the Fleshmancer to know that his actions would always be opposed in every timeline, no matter what, regardless of if he had supreme power. Though I admittedly felt by the end of the game that there actually should have been more exploration with that dynamic because it was so interesting. Even with the bit of backstory that you get from Teeks, I would have liked to see a bit more of resolution with those two. Though that is another element of the storytelling I personally like, because with Teeks stories, I can understand someone playing this and missing out on lore-related context because they don't check for new artifacts or setting up camps all the time. But I kind of like that you gotta seek those pieces out for lore like that. They're these little add-ons that end up contributing to the world building as you're introduced to all these people and places. And you gotta give the game kudos, because in an age where everyone is looking at open world games as the zenith of exploration, this game is pretty linear in some respects, while also giving you the freedom to explore things on your own and tap into traditional vibes. It really strikes a balance in that regard that I appreciated while playing. And it was interesting because one story that I felt was kind of thought-provoking with Teeks was actually the one with the three sisters. Because Teeks basically asks what credence can be found among lifestyles that are contradictory in nature, and whether the existence of that variety is founded in fate or mere happenstance, as she puts it. And I found that one in particular to be very thought-provoking and just pretty cool. But yeah, I would say the only real problems that I have with the story is that Erlina and Brigades don't really have a resolution, and I was kind of looking forward to seeing if there would be any meaningful follow-up to those arcs past the Fleshmancer's introduction. I feel like in the end, there wasn't really a ton of deep reflection on the implications of their portrayal, neither for Valere or Zale or Moraine. Aside from that, I think my only other complaints with the game is I wish there was more to do in general within the Cloud Kingdom, just because it was so cool. And then just wanting the map within each area to be a tad more focused. Like, I wanted to be able to see what specific section I was in on each island, but you can't really see that, but it's not the end of the world. Oh, and the last complaint that's barely a complaint is that you only get to see this beautiful scene of the actual Sea of Stars once, because oh my god, did it take me by surprise with how utterly phenomenal it was. At the end of the day, this game is an instant classic for me, and just serves as an example of a truly remarkable body of art that really took a village to manifest, what with all the hard work that went into it. Also, I think it has some really good replay value too. Like, I could definitely see myself jumping back in here just to, see the world again, or to do some of the other challenges I think I still have left on my save file. So yeah, I think this one is going to stick with me moving forward, because it definitely left a meaningful impression, and I hope that anyone who hasn't played this game yet, as well as the ones who have, can attest to that as well.